Hi students, welcome to this talk on children's rights, parents' rights. I want to think about child protection social work in Germany. I'm actually designing this presentation for two groups of students. If you're watching this in Italy, hello. I might have seen you on a previous visit. I go to Genoa as often as I can. Genoa students, I can't be with you this spring. This video is a nice way for me to make up for my absence. My students in Vechta, I'm giving this presentation for you guys, integrating it into a course, social work in Germany. And this is a nice chance for me to think about social work in a comparative sense. I love describing the German system to people outside of Germany to get that outsider's view on German practice. And our topic today, child protection, is obviously a very central part of social work practice. How does it work? How does it work in Germany? That's going to be what we're going to be thinking about over the course of two presentations. Maybe it's worth me just stopping here and asking you to think a little bit about these images that I'm giving you. Have a look at this. What is this image illustrating? Can you remember the story? You might want to pause here and discuss it with your partner. Did you guess? Did you guess? Well, this is, of course, an image taken from the children's story Hansel and Gretel. This is a German story. I think it's by Brothers Grimm, and very much typical of the children's stories of that particular era. In those days, life was quite harsh, and for children, filled with danger, filled with cruelty even. This story, like many, has the figure of the dangerous and malevolent stepmother. The birth family of these kids is suffering from poverty. There's a famine, there's nothing to eat. And the parents actually abandon the children, and the children then end up wandering into the dark forest where they find the gingerbread house. So these children's stories making us realize how gloomy life was for children in a time when children's rights weren't protected. And that, I guess, is a bridge to our theme today. We're thinking about children's rights, parents' rights, the rights granted in our country's state's legislation. So understanding child protection. We're going to get an introduction to the basic principles of the child protection system in Germany. Over the course of these two presentations, I'm going to show you how it works over here. How are we best going to do this? Discuss with your partner, and the image is a clue. Pause here. And of course, my image is an image which you'll often find above courts. And I think this photo is taken from a court in Bern in Switzerland. This is Justice, the figure of Justice. She's blindfolded, holding a scales, I guess, representing the fairness of the decision of the court. And my reference to law here really eats to the heart of this area of social work. How is child protection organized in a particular country? I guess that question on the basic level is really a legal question, isn't it? So I guess we have to go right back to Germany's constitution as the natural starting point for our discussion. Yeah, what is a constitution? What is a constitution? When was Germany's constitution written? What is it called? And is it relevant to child protection? Pause right here. Defining a constitution, typical definitions have the idea of the constitution being fundamental rights. Fundamental rights of the individual, fundamental rights regulating how other laws in the country work. When was Germany's constitution written? Actually, I've got a nice scan here. If you've got very good eyesight, you can just make out the word 1949. So Germany's constitution dates back to the post-war years. And indeed, that's not uncommon in Europe. What's it called? In German, Grundgesetz. We translate that rather word for word as basic law. I always thought fundamental law was a better translation, but we officially call it basic law. Is it relevant to child protection? Absolutely. In particular, the German constitution actually has an article which explicitly relates to child protection questions. Good, I'll come back to that in a minute. Another question though, first of all, are there similar fundamental rights documents? What other fundamental rights documents do you know from this period? Once again, pause, discuss this question with your partner. The late 1940s, are there other rights documents from that period? Well, I'm guessing you might have given one of two answers. Italian students, you're likely to have thought of your country's own constitution. Many states have a constitution that dates from the post-World War II years. Of course, seen internationally, we have another exciting human rights document, this one here. This is a photo of Eleanor Roosevelt holding a poster of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1949. This was a time when the whole of Europe was thinking, the whole of the world community was thinking about human rights questions, and our constitutions often overlap with that declaration quite closely. It's a fun activity to do to compare the German constitution with the Universal Declaration. You'll find formulations that echo each other interestingly. Good, good. And Germany's constitution has an article, Article 6, which really explicitly touches upon child protection questions. Have a look at this. The basic law clearly defines the relationship between parents, their children, and the state. Marriage and the family shall enjoy the special protection of the state. In the original formulation, it's something like state law. 2, the care and the upbringing of children is the natural right of parents and a duty primarily incumbent upon them. The state shall watch over them in their performance of this duty. 3, children may be separated from their families against the will of their parents or guardians only pursuant to a law, and only if the parents or the guardians fail in their duties or the children are otherwise in danger of serious neglect. So as you can see, this is real social work language. You know, this is the terminology of social work. This is the subject matter of social work right at the beginning of Germany's constitution, Article 6. I want you to pause it here, discuss with your partner. My questions are not stupid, though they may sound a bit stupid. So who in Germany is responsible for child raising? And what does the state do exactly? Stare once again at those formulations and see if you can answer those two questions. Pause here. What did you come up with? Well, the German formulations really are quite fascinating. They really are quite interesting. The care and upbringing of children is the natural right of parents. You know, so it's granting parents this natural right, this human right to care for their children, to raise their children. And it adds not only a right, it's also a duty, and a duty primarily incumbent upon them. It's their primary duty. The state, what does the state do? The state shall watch over them in this duty. In other words, the state has the role of the watchman, if you like, the sentinel. Okay, so the state is a kind of watchman. It's just observing, it's checking, you know, to take action if need be. Isn't that interesting? So a fascinating picture that's in the vivid language of this particular early constitutional article. Good, good. And German social work law really is based on that core concept. You know, late 1940s, we're here 70 years later, but the services today are very much built on those premises. Good, good. Let's move on to a different German law now. We're leaving the constitution. We're now going to investigate the Kinder- und Jugendhilfegesetz, which is the German expression for children's services law. Article 1 of this law is itself a law book. I say law book, a kind of social code, a piece of legislation, a statute. The Social Code, Book 8. German welfare state law is collected in these social codes. There's actually 12 in total. You could fill a bookshelf by printing them out and having them on your office shelf. We call them Sozialgesetzbücher, but again, the word book here is meant in the sense of statute. Parents' rights and children's rights. The text provides extensive detail on children's services in Germany. If you look at this SGB Act, you're going to get rich detail on how children's services work. You even get catalogues of these individual concrete services. Put together in the late 1980s, came into force in 1990, 1991. What international document dating from this time is also of relevance to social workers? Discuss with your neighbour. Well, I'm guessing you saw that logo, you're recognizing the United Nations logo there. I'm alluding to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, also arising in exactly the same time, late 1980s. That was when we collectively, the international community, put together the ideas in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And those ideas were very, very new at the time. You know, the idea of giving concrete participation rights, you know, gender equality, all of those ideas really out there in the 1980s. And those ideas were seeping into this German legislation and other countries' legislation too. So there you are. Once again, although I'm talking about Germany, I'm talking specifically about German law. Germany was not isolated from other countries, but rather very much influenced by international discourses around children's rights. Good. Let me return to this SGB Act, this particular Children's Services Law. So a single law in the form of a law book or a statute. If you printed it, you can get these rather slim editions, and it's printed on something like 75 pages of text in very, very small print. So if it's printed compactly, it really is a little pamphlet, so to say. It's detailed. It really is detailed, Germanic detail. The rights and the duties of various parties are all detailed there. You know, the rights and the duties, children, parents, the state, and the state's social workers. That's all outlined. Maybe you're expecting that, but have a look at this. You've got other things in there as well. The law contains the aims, the objectives of services. So as well as saying what people must do, the law tells them why they're doing what they're doing. As a Brit, I find that quite refreshing. That's often absent in UK social work legislation. So, you know, these laws really are written to be read by practitioners. Yeah, is this to be expected? Why does the legislation outline the goals of social work services? Pause here, natter with your neighbour, think about that question. My classic answer here is that this is all about German transparency. You know, the German society, it's democratic. The laws that we have are laws for the citizens. You know, citizens should be able to understand their rights clearly. So social work law in Germany really is readable. You know, parents could certainly read the texts and see what services they have entitlements to. The social worker themselves, you know, social work students will moan studying law, as all social work students moan when studying social work law wherever in the world. But ultimately, you know, I could read these laws as a non-native speaker and get my head around them. So we've got this fairly transparent language. The legislator doesn't only say what we must do and what we mustn't do. The legislator also knows why we're doing what we're doing. You know, what kind of services are to be given. You know, should this be therapeutic here or pedagogical there? Should this be concerned with the clients every day? We get this very descriptive language helping to draw us into the laws. And then they are, for me, actually a pleasure to read and to analyse. Good. I'm going to come to a close for this presentation, but of course the whole topic continues with the next one. Bear with me while I try to stop my video. Hope you like the next one. See you in a minute.